Back for session 4 of Corrie ten Boom. When we left off, they have 9 Jews, or the one young boy was not a Jew, but he was a teenage boy that was in danger. So they had their 9 folks hiding in their secret room. And in our class, I showed this picture, which is an actual picture of the room. I think they've maybe made a museum out of it. So you can see this hole wouldn't have been there. That's a hole that they've made so that you can see back into the room. So the sliding panel is probably right in here. So this is a picture of the secret room that is in Corrie's bedroom. And when we left off, things were getting very bad, and they decided that they just had to keep going, doing everything they could for those around them. And remember, Miss Haley wanted me to be sure and point out why read this during missionary month. She isn't a missionary per se by the traditional definition, but she is most definitely a missionary in the sense that we are to be missionaries by sharing the gospel with those around her, by helping the hurting. Jesus says, if you've done it to the least of these, my brethren, you've done it unto me. So she is a missionary in the same way that I am and you are to be missionaries. So let's pick our story up right there. Corrie, Betsy said, gently shaking her awake. There's a man downstairs asking for you. He said he would only talk to you. Corrie sat up weakly, her head spinning. 9 months had passed since the secret room was built. It was now February 1944. Corrie had been fighting the flu for a few days. Even with extra rest, she did not feel any better. Her head spun harder at the thought of talking to anyone right now, but Corrie knew it could be important. So she struggled to her feet. There by the bed lay her prison bag, packed and ready. In her bag were a Bible, clothing, toiletries like a toothbrush, toothpaste, vitamins, aspirin, and many other things, thread and needle. It had become a kind of safety net for me against the terrors of prison, because they knew that prison was a possibility. Coughing and stumbling with the effort, Corrie went slowly along the handrail to meet the man. Corrie took a deep breath and opened the door. The stranger peered through the door frame, speaking hastily as it creaked open. Miss ten Boom, I need your help. Is it about a watch? Corrie asked. No, the Gestapo has taken my wife. Our lives are in danger, and I hear you help Jews. Corrie's head throbbed as she tried to focus. I don't know how I can help, she answered. This was very strange. She did not know this man. No one had told her in their network that he was coming, and he wasn't using the secret codes. How could she be sure he was telling the truth? Please, there's no time. All I need is money. A policeman will take a bribe of $600. Corrie hesitated again, not sure what to make of this man. Something seemed off, but she couldn't place a finger on it. One thing was, he would never look her in the eye. What if she was wrong? What if he really did need her help? I'll do what I can. Come back later, she finally answered. Thank you, he said. I won't forget this. Corrie closed the door and shuffled back up the stairs to bed. She sent one of the women to the bank for the money. Worries crowded her mind as she drifted off into a fevered sleep. Not much later that day, the sound of the buzzer jolted Corrie awake. She groaned, her head pounding with the sound. She sat up. Yussi, one of their Jews in hiding, sped past, his face white and his hands shaking. What was happening? Others ran past her bed too, ducking in behind the sliding panel of the secret room. Corrie gasped as she finally understood. This was no drill. 6 people disappeared behind the sliding door. Corrie slammed it shut as heavy footsteps crashed up the stairs. Oh no, thought Corrie. as she could hear the sound of asthmatic Mary's wheezing through the wall. Desperately, she prayed, Lord Jesus, you have the power to heal. Heal Mary right now. Not another sound came from behind the false wall. She quickly jumped back in her bed just as the bedroom door flew open. A tall, large man wearing a Gestapo uniform burst into the room. Your name, he demanded as she lifted her aching head slowly from the pillow. Cornelia ten Boom, she replied, trying to sound sleepy. Ah, so you're the ringleader. Come on, down the stairs. Corey took a step to pick up her prison bag, but then she stopped, realizing it was right in front of the panel. She couldn't. She dare not go over there. But how could she face prison without a Bible and the other little comforts? Dear Lord, help me not be selfish, she prayed. She said later, it was the hardest thing I had ever done to walk out of that room, leaving behind my prison bag. The man, a secret police captain, pushed Corey ahead of him as she stumbled down the steps to the dining room. Father and Betsy sat in the room quietly. Other secret police agents were watching them with stern, cold eyes. Where are the Jews? The captain shouted. Jews? Corey replied. There aren't any Jews here. He slapped her hard across the face, bringing blood to her lip and causing her to fall to the floor. Jesus, help us, Corey cried, and at the name of Jesus, the captain put his hand down and said, if you won't talk, the skinny one will. Silently, Corey prayed, Lord, keep our guests safe in the secret room. The soldier dragged Betsy to the next room. By now, the sounds of hammer blows and cracking wood echoed throughout the house as the other agents searched for Corey's Jews. She held her breath, praying they would not find the secret room. When the captain returned with Betsy, she had a bruised cheek. Oh, Betsy, Corey said as Betsy collapsed beside her. Betsy looked at the man, not with hatred, but with pity. I feel so sorry for him, she said. Prisoners will remain silent, he shouted, but his face had gone white, and with that he turned away, leaving Betsy, Corey, and Father in the hands of the other Gestapo agents. Then, down in the alley, the doorbell rang. But did they not see that the sign was gone? Someone had knocked it from the window as the raid began. But when Corey looked up, there on the sill, the broken pieces of the sign were fitted carefully together. I was going to show you, I don't think I showed you a picture of that. There's a picture of the sign here. So it was this sign advertising these kinds of watches. And so someone had knocked it from the window and it broke, but one of the agents realized what it was and fit it back together and put it back in the window. And when I looked up, I saw Willems, the name of one of the soldiers, staring at me. I thought so. That was a signal. He ran down the stairs. Now, Willems, this soldier, is not dressed in a soldier uniform. He is dressed in plain clothes. So he looks like anybody, just a normal person. So he ran down the stairs. I heard the alley door open and Willems' smooth voice, come in, won't you? Willems said. Have you heard? A woman's voice. They've got Erman, not Pickwick. Remember they had nicknamed him Pickwick. Oh, I heard Willems say. Who was with him? He pumped her for information and then placed her under arrest. I stared in anguish at the sign in the window, announcing to all the world that all was as usual at the Beiji. Our home had been turned into a trap. How many more would fall into it before this day was over? 2 men came clumping down the stairs carrying something. They had discovered the old radio beneath the stairs. The doorbell rang. Again, there were questions and another arrest. It seemed to me that we had never had so many callers. At least from the banging and thumping above us, they had not discovered the secret room yet. Now a new sound made me jump. The phone, the illegal phone, in the hall was ringing. Willems grabbed me by the wrist and yanked me down the stairs behind him, and he thrust the receiver up against my ear, but kept his hand on it. "Answer it," he said. "This is the Ten Boom residence and shop," I said stiffly. The person on the other end did not catch the strangeness in my voice. "Miss Ten Boom, you're in terrible danger. They've arrested Ermin Sluger. They know everything." On and on she babbled, the man at my side hearing everything. She had scarcely hung up when the phone rang again. A man's voice came with the same message. At last, the third time I repeated my formal and not typical greeting, there was a click on the other end and the line went dead. Our friends have wised up. But I heard enough. A man appeared in the doorway. "We've searched the whole place, Willems," he said. "If there's a secret room here, the devil himself built it." Willems looked from Betsy to Father to me. "There's a secret room," he said, "and people are using it. We'll set a guard around this house until they've all turned to mummies." It had been half an hour since the doorbell had rung last, so word was out. No one else would walk into the trap at the Beijing. Apparently Willems had come to the same conclusion, because abruptly he ordered us on our feet and down to the hallway with our coats and hats. In front of us down the stairs came the people who had been at church. They had been having a church service in their living room that morning. But apparently most of those at the prayer service had gotten gone before the raid. But here came Nolly, Peter, and Willem, the whole family, Father, all four of his children, and one grandchild. We marched through the alley and into the street. By the time we got inside the police station, I was shaking with cold. Remember, she's still sick. I counted 35 people who were arrested from the raid on the Beijing. Toward evening, a policeman carried into the gym a large basket of fresh hot rolls. I could not swallow mine for my aching throat. In the evening, a group gathered around Father for prayers. Every day of my life had ended just like this, that deep, steady voice entrusting us all to the care of God. His blue eyes seemed to be seeing beyond the locked and crowded room, beyond Harlem, beyond earth itself, as he quoted from memory, "Thou art my hiding place and my shield. I hope in thy word. Hold thou me up, and I shall be safe." There's a reason we memorize scripture. When we can't have a Bible with us, we can still have the scriptures in our mind and in our heart. None of us slept much. I dozed with my back up against the wall. The worst pain now seemed to be in my chest. It was noon when soldiers entered the room and ordered us onto our feet. In front of the door stood a bus with soldiers occupying the rear seats. Father, Betsy, and I squeezed into a double seat near the front. The bus shuddered and started up. Police cleared a path and we inched forward. I gazed out the window, holding on to Harlem with my eyes. 2 hours later, the bus stopped at Gestapo headquarters. We were marched into a large room where the endless process of taking down names and addresses began all over again. The chief's eyes fell on Father. "That old man?" he cried. "Did he have to be arrested?" My brother Willem led Father up to the desk. The Gestapo chief leaned forward. "I'd like to send you home, old fellow," he said. "I'll take your word that you won't cause any more trouble." I could not see Father's face from where I sat, but I heard his answer. "If I go home today," he said evenly and clearly, "tomorrow I will open my door again to anyone in need." The friendliness drained from the other man's face. "Get back in line," he shouted. Late that night, we were marched at last out of the building to a large army truck. 2 soldiers had to lift Father over the tailgate. The truck had no springs and bounced roughly over the bomb-pitted streets. I slipped my arm behind Father's back to keep him from striking the edge of our bench. It appeared now that our destination was the federal penitentiary. The truck jerked to a halt, and behind us, massive gates clanged shut. The truck backed up to a long, low building, and soldiers prodded us inside. Then somewhere to the right, a door opened. "Women prisoners, follow me." As I stepped away from the wall, I glanced swiftly around the room for Father. There he was, a few feet from the wall, seated in a straight-backed chair one of the guards had brought him. We started down the long corridor, but I hung back, gazing desperately at Father, Willem, Peter, all our brave underground workers. "Father," I cried, "God be with you." His head turned toward me. The overhead light flashed on his glasses. "And with you, my daughters," he said, and here's a picture. I just love this picture. Father waving goodbye to his brave daughters. I turned and followed the others. Behind me, the door slammed closed. "Oh, Father, when will I see you next?" Betsy's hand slipped into mine. The procession down the corridor continued. The walls on both sides of us were lined with narrow metal doors. Now the column of women halted. The matron was fitting a key into one of the doors. The door banged shut. The column moved on. Another door unlocked. Another human being closed behind it. No two from our town of Harlem were allowed in the same cell. Betsy stepped through a door first. Before she could turn or say goodbye, it had closed. 2 cells farther on, Nolly left me. "Ten Boom, Cornelia." Another door rasped open. The cell was deep and narrow, scarcely wider than the door. A woman lay on the cot. 3 others on straw ticks on the floor. "Give this one the cot," the matron said. "She's sick." A spasm of coughing seized my chest and throat. "We don't want a sick woman in here," someone shouted. They were stumbling to their feet, backing away from me. "I'm so sorry," I began, but another voice interrupted me. "It isn't your fault. Come on, Frau Mikes, give her the cot." The young woman turned to me. "Let me hang up your coat and hat." I will never be able to sleep on such a bed. The straw mattress was filthy and smelled terrible. But the next thing I knew, it was morning and there was a clattering at the door. "Food call," my cellmates told me. I struggled to my feet. A square of metal had dropped open in the door, forming a small shelf. Onto this, someone in the hall was placing tin plates filled with a steaming gruel, a watery soup. "There's a new one here," Frau Mikes called out. "We get 5 portions." Another tin plate was slammed onto the shelf. I picked up my plate, stared at the watery gray porridge, and handed it silently to Frau Mikes to eat. In a little while, the plates were collected and the pass-through in the door slammed shut. Later in the morning, a key grated in the lock, the bolt banged, and the door opened long enough for the sanitary bucket to be passed out. So they have a little bucket in the corner that they use the bathroom in, and they pass that out and get a clean bucket. The women picked up their straw pallets from the floor and piled them in a corner. Then a prison boredom, which I soon learned to fear above all else, settled over the cell. At first, I attempted to relieve it by talking with the others, but though they were as courteous as people can possibly be who are living literally on top of one another, they turned aside my questions. I eventually realized that prisoners instinctively shied away from questions about their larger lives. So she continues to get worse and worse and feverish. And finally, one day, she is taken away to a hospital, a doctor. And so I'm going to tell you this little part. Let's see. So the soldier, so she's waiting in a waiting room, waiting to be seen by a doctor, and the soldier spoke to the trim white uniformed nurse behind the reception desk and told her to take me to the bathroom. This way, she said crisply. She took me down a short hall, stepped into the bathroom with me, and shut the door. Quick, is there any way I can help you? I blinked at her. Oh, yes. Could you get me a Bible? And a needle and thread, a toothbrush, and soap? She bit her lip doubtfully. I'll do what I can, and she was gone. But her kindness shone in the little room as brightly as the gleaming white tiles. My heart soared as I scrubbed the grime off my neck and face. A man's voice at the door. Come on, you've been in there long enough. Oops. Tessa barks when somebody knocks at the door. I rinsed off the soap and followed the soldier back to the waiting room. The nurse did not look up. After another long wait, my name was called. The doctor asked me to cough, took my temperature and blood pressure, applied his stethoscope, and announced that I had pleurisy. Similar, I guess, to pneumonia. He wrote something on a sheet of paper. Then he laid a hand for an instant on my shoulder. I hope, he said in a low voice, that I'm doing you a favor with this diagnosis. In the waiting room, the soldier was on his feet, ready for me. As I crossed the room, the nurse rose briskly from her desk and swished past me. In my hand, I felt something pressed into my hand wrapped in paper. I slid it into my pocket as I followed the soldier down the stairs. The other woman was already back in the car, and the sick man did not reappear. And so, I'm getting ahead of myself. All during the return ride, my hand strayed to the object in my pocket. The high walls loomed ahead, and then the gate rang shut behind us. At last, at the end of the long, echoing corridors, I reached my cell. My cellmates crowded around me as I unwrapped the package in my pocket. 2 bars of pre-war soap appeared. So after the war, soap is very hard to come by, very brittle, made of lye. There was no toothbrush or needle, but a whole packet of safety pins. But most wonderful of all, in 4 small booklets, the 4 Gospels. So I have to ask myself, if I were in prison, what would be the first thing I would ask for? Would it be a Bible? I hope that would be my answer, but I just don't know. I have to search myself and say, Lord, help me to be as faithful in time of trouble. If trouble ever comes in my life, like it did to Corey's, give me that faithfulness.